The real game changer in a way, environmental horror in the United States in modern times, New Orleans, where you could see everything wrong with America in just that one situation. Tell us about your approach to singing about Katrina and New Orleans.
I mean, I just tried to paint the picture in that song about what was going on. And at the time I wrote the song, it was all happening. It wasn't over, it was happening. And I wrote the song actually in a hotel room in Beirut, Lebanon. I had something in common with George W. Bush. We both flew over New Orleans. He was on his way to a fundraiser in California, and I was on my way to tour Lebanon and Jordan and the West Bank. I got to New Orleans a few months later and saw the writing on the chalkboards of the people that were listing their names, thinking they'd likely die, and at least people would know who was here before they died. And, you know, such a dismal situation that was so exacerbated by the authorities preventing people from rescuing others and just letting them drown. They seemed to be treating the whole of New Orleans like it was like a potential riot zone rather than a place full of people that needed to be rescued. It was such a blatantly racist reaction to a tragedy, to a disaster, to climate change, to badly maintained infrastructure, to everything. But they just treated it like like they were like the majority black population of New Orleans was the enemy, rather than American citizens who needed to be rescued from disaster. And so, and then of course after the abject failure of the U.S. government to launch an effective rescue of the people that were dying, then they poured salt in the wounds afterwards by doing a completely inept job of caring for the survivors. As I'm sure you know, and as a lot of people who are around then knows, the only people serving hot food to the homeless thousands and thousands of people in New Orleans for months was the Rainbow family. That's wonderful that they did that, and that's not at all to say anything negative about the Rainbow family. I'm so glad that somebody did something, but FEMA was sending people to the Rainbow family, and FEMA was feeding FEMA. Literally, FEMA was feeding FEMA. What the hell is FEMA for? They did a much better job after the flood in New Orleans in 1929, actually. The government did. After 1929, after the flood in 1929, which saw massive thousands and thousands of people in New Orleans made homeless, the government set up tent camps. They were racially segregated, but they were tent camps, and they took care of everybody who was homeless from the flood in 1929. They didn't do anything like that after Katrina.
Inaction is a crime. That was a nice slogan in there. Mall's more important than people's lives.
Okay. Because they were literally, in the course of this, of course, I had been reading wonderful journalists like the guy in the Times-Picayune and other publications who had been writing for years about the state of the infrastructure in New Orleans. And of course, there had been activists that I was already, along with many other people, very familiar with, who had been saying that if we don't take care of the wetlands outside of this, out at the mouth of the Mississippi, then there's much less of the kinds of vegetation and all that could absorb a storm surge, and that the city and the levees were going to become much more vulnerable if they did things like build that mall that I referred to in the song, instead of the wetlands staying wetlands and doing what wetlands do so well. So this was an entirely man-made and capitalism-made disaster.
Everybody knew that it could happen. The likelihood was clear, the future was coming. Now it's here. They had to fix the levees, 'cause otherwise they'd break. On one side was the city, above it was the lake. It was in the daily papers, in bold letters was the writ. What would happen when the big one hit? But every year they cut the funding just a little more, so they could give it to the army to fight their oil war. National Geographic and the Times-Picayune, they forecast the apocalypse, said it was coming soon. Preparations must be made, they said. Now is the time. It was years ago they shouted. Inaction was a crime. They said the dikes must be improved and the wetlands must be saved. But Washington decided instead they should be paved. 'Cause laws were more important than people's lives. So put some gold dust in your eyes and hope no storm arrives. New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans. Years and years of warning, no evacuation plan. It was just if the waters rose, get out if you can. There were no buses, no one chartered any trains. There was no plan to rescue all of those who would remain. All the people with no money, all the people with no wheels, all of those who couldn't hotwire what that they could steal. Thousands and thousands of people abandoned by the state, abandoned by their country, just left to meet their fate. New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans. Their attics, an army of the poor, an army of the destitute who couldn't get away. And the world will remember those sad and awful days when people shouted from their houses, dying on their roofs. When people came to find them, they were turned back by the troops. They died there with no water, they died there in the heat. They were shot down by the soldiers for trying to find some food to eat. New Orleans, scattered through the nation, 500,000 refugees. Here we are, in the richest country on the earth, where the color of your skin determines what your life is worth, where oil is the king, where global warming is ignored, where the very end of life is the place we're heading towards, where it's more than just a metaphor, the flooding of the dike. And if we don't stop this madness, the whole world will be like New Orleans. New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, New